I was halfway into my jacket when my phone started vibrating against the kitchen counter. Not a text. Calls. 3 of them. All missed. All from my attorney, Mark Halden. Then the message came through. Call me now. Do not go to your sister's house. My arm froze in midair, jacket sleeve dangling uselessly from my wrist. For a moment, the house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. My sister Rachel had been begging me all week to come over for Sunday dinner in Maple Grove, Illinois. It's been forever, Iz. I made your roast chicken, the way Mom used to. I'd almost smiled when she said it. Almost. Now the words replayed in my head, warped and sharp, like I'd missed a warning buried between syllables. I dialed Mark back. He answered immediately. "Where are you?" he asked. "At home. Why?" "Good. Lock your doors. I'm coming over. There's something you need to see." Something in his voice, tight, controlled, made my stomach drop. 20 minutes later, his sedan pulled into my driveway. He didn't even take off his coat when he came inside. No pleasantries, no easing into it. Just a thick brown envelope placed carefully on my kitchen table, like it might explode. "Isabella," he said quietly, "please sit down." I did. My pulse was loud enough to hear. "3 days ago," he continued, "your sister Rachel and her husband filed a petition with the county court. They're asking to have you declared mentally incompetent." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline that never came. "That's insane," I said, a shaky laugh forcing its way out. "I run my own interior design firm. I handle contracts, payroll, taxes. I'm fine." "I know," he said, "but they're claiming early cognitive decline, confusion, poor judgment, memory lapses." He opened the envelope and spread the documents out like crime scene photos. A doctor's note from last winter, when I'd complained about insomnia. A statement from a neighbor who said I looked disoriented once while taking out the trash. A highlighted line about grief affecting decision-making. "They're building a narrative," Mark said calmly, "and narratives win cases." My hands began to tremble. Why would Rachel do this? Mark turned his laptop toward me. A number glowed on the screen. "Do you know what your parents' lake property is worth now?" "Maybe $2 million?" "5.3, he said, "and you own half." The room tilted. "If they succeed," he continued, "they become your legal guardians. They control your finances, your home, your medical decisions." I felt something cold settle deep in my chest. Rachel. The girl who braided my hair before school. The woman who held my hand at our parents' funeral, trying to erase me. Outside, the first snow of the season drifted past the window. Inside, I realized something far more dangerous than money was at stake. My life had quietly become a battlefield. Mark didn't rush me. He watched as I reread the documents, my eyes skimming the same sentences over and over, hoping they'd rearrange themselves into something less horrifying. "They're saying I can't think straight," I whispered. "They're saying you're vulnerable," he corrected, "which is worse." He pulled up another file on his laptop and rotated it toward me. Rows of numbers filled the screen. Mortgages, credit cards, missed payments. "Rachel and her husband are drowning," he said. "New house outside Chicago, $700,000 in debt. His startup burned through nearly $500,000. They're behind on taxes." The air felt thinner. "So, this is about money." "It always is," Mark said gently. "They're framing it as protection. But if the court agrees, they get access to everything you own." I pushed back from the table, pacing the kitchen. Every memory suddenly felt suspicious. The way Rachel hovered when I paid bills. The time she offered to organize my files. the sweetness in her voice when she asked questions that felt harmless at the time. "She's been collecting moments," Mark said, as if reading my mind. "Normal human forgetfulness, twisting it into a pattern." I stopped pacing. "What do we do?" He leaned forward. "First, we prove you're competent. Independent psych evaluation. Second, you document your life. Everything, meals, calls, appointments, decisions, time-stamped. And Rachel? You act like nothing's wrong," he said. "If she knows we're onto her, she could rush this or destroy evidence." The word act stuck in my throat. After he left, I locked the door and slid down against it, my back pressed to the wood. The house felt unfamiliar, like it no longer belonged to me. That night, I started the log. 7:12 a.m. Woke up 7:45 a.m. Coffee, toast, 9 a.m., client emails. It felt ridiculous at first, but after a few days something shifted. Writing everything down gave me control, proof that my mind was still mine. The evaluation came next. Dr. Karen Lowe. Calm eyes, sharp questions, memory tests, logic puzzles. When she smiled at the end, relief hit me so hard I nearly cried. "You're cognitively solid," she said. "Above average, actually." 2 days later, Rachel called. Her voice was warm, too warm. "Hey, you disappeared last weekend. Let's do dinner again. I'll make lasagna." My grip tightened around the phone. "Sure," I said lightly. "Sounds great. And bring those estate papers, okay? Legal stuff can get confusing." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Dinner and deception. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake replaying her voice, realizing something that hurt more than the threat itself. Betrayal doesn't arrive screaming. It smiles. Friday night, rain tapped softly against the windows, steady and patient. I was midway through updating my log when I heard a knock. Not loud, hesitant. I opened the door and froze. Mia. My 15-year-old niece stood on my porch, soaked through, clutching her backpack like it was the only solid thing left in her world. Her eyes were red, terrified. "Aunt Iz," she whispered. "Please, can I come in? They don't know I'm here." Every instinct in me screamed danger, but I pulled her inside anyway, locked the door, wrapped her in a blanket, made cocoa she barely touched. She didn't cry at first. She just sat there, staring at the floor like it might open up and swallow her. Then she pulled out her phone. "I wasn't supposed to hear it," she said. "Dad left his tablet unlocked. They were talking about you." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Mia." She hit play. My sister's voice filled the kitchen. Calm, casual, cold. "Once the court signs off, we sell her condo and move the money. She won't even realize what's happening." Then her husband, low and calculating. "That clears the debt, buys us time." And then Rachel again, sharper now. "She's had everything handed to her. It's our turn." The recording ended. The room tilted. I couldn't breathe. Rage and grief collided so hard it felt like my chest might split open. Mia's hands were shaking. "I know it was wrong to record them, but they talked about you like you weren't even a person." I pulled her into my arms before she could see me break. "You did the right thing," I whispered, "even when it hurts." That night, I sent the audio to Mark. He called back within minutes. "This changes everything," he said. "This isn't guardianship, it's fraud, exploitation. We're going on offense." For the first time since this started, I felt something steady replace the fear. Not hope, resolve. The morning of the hearing, the sky hung low and gray. The courthouse steps were slick with rain. Rachel sat across from me inside, polished and composed, playing the part of the worried sister perfectly. But when our eyes met, something flickered. Fear. And I knew. She finally realized she'd lost control of the story. And this time, the truth was about to be heard. The courtroom smelled like old wood and nerves. Every shuffle of paper sounded too loud. Every breath felt borrowed. Rachel sat across from me, hair perfectly styled, hands folded like she was praying for my recovery. If I didn't know better, I might have believed her act. That was the most terrifying part. How convincing she still looked. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The case was called. Rachel's attorney stood first, voice smooth, rehearsed. Your Honor, this is a tragic family matter. My client has only one goal, to protect her sister, who has shown alarming signs of cognitive decline. He gestured toward me like I might wander off at any second. Photos appeared, notes, statements. Ordinary moments twisted into proof of decay. I felt small, exposed. Like my entire life had been placed under a microscope by someone who knew exactly where to aim it. Then Mark stood, calm, still, dangerous in his restraint. This petition, he said evenly, has nothing to do with protection. It has everything to do with money. Rachel stiffened. Mark submitted the psychiatric evaluation. The judge scanned it, eyebrow lifting. No impairment? She asked. None, Mark replied. In fact, Miss Carter scored above average. A murmur rippled through the room. Mark wasn't done. He laid out the debts, the failed business, the unpaid taxes, the motive. Rachel's attorney jumped up. Irrelevant. Essential, Mark shot back. Because it explains why two people drowning financially decided to sacrifice a family member instead of their lifestyle. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. Then Mark nodded to me. My hands trembled as I stood, a small USB drive clenched between my fingers. Your Honor, Mark said, this audio was recorded by the petitioner's own daughter. Rachel's face drained of color. The judge's voice was flat. Play it. Rachel's voice filled the courtroom, cold, certain, cruel. She won't even realize what's happening. Her husband's reply followed. That clears our debt. Silence slammed down when it ended. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. Mrs. Carter appears perfectly lucid to me. Would you care to explain why you were planning to sell her home? Rachel opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The gavel struck. This petition is dismissed, with prejudice. My knees nearly gave out. The judge continued, each word a blade. You are prohibited from contacting your sister. Legal costs will be paid by you. This matter is referred for further investigation. Just like that, it was over. Rachel collapsed into her chair, hands shaking. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. Because even when justice wins, it doesn't give you back the sister you lost. And as I walked out of that courtroom, I understood something I never wanted to learn. Some wars end in silence, not celebration. The courthouse emptied fast, like everyone was afraid the truth might follow them outside. Reporters murmured somewhere behind us, cameras flashing, but I barely noticed. My legs carried me down the steps on autopilot. I didn't feel relieved, I felt scraped raw. Mark packed his files beside me, his movements calm, practiced. You handled yourself well, he said quietly. The judge saw through it. Did she? I asked. My eyes stayed on the wet pavement. Because I still don't recognize the woman who tried to destroy me. Cold air burned my lungs when we stepped outside. Then I felt small hands grab my coat. Aunt Iz. Mia stood there, eyes swollen, face streaked with tears. I pulled her into a hug before she could say anything. She clung to me like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I didn't mean for things to explode like that. I cupped her face. You don't apologize for telling the truth, ever. Mark cleared his throat. The court referred this for prosecution. There may be charges. Mia flinched. "That's not on you," I said gently. "That's on them." That night, my house felt different. Quiet, but not empty. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table where it all began, staring at an old coffee ring Rachel had left months ago. Proof she'd been here. Proof she was gone. My phone buzzed. "Mia, can I stay with you for a while?" "Dad's furious. I don't feel safe." I didn't hesitate. "Pack a bag. You're home." She arrived an hour later with a duffel bag and red eyes. We didn't talk much. I made hot chocolate. She fell asleep on the couch like a child half her age. For the first time in months, I slept without fear. In the days that followed, the house slowly changed. Laughter replaced tension. Mornings were rushed and messy. Evenings smelled like food instead of anxiety. One afternoon, Mia looked up from her homework. "Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" The question landed hard. "Forgiveness," I said slowly, "isn't pretending it didn't happen. It's choosing not to let it own you." She nodded, eyes shining. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew this. Family wasn't who tried to control me. It was who stayed when the truth came out. Weeks passed, and the house that once felt like a crime scene slowly became a home again. Mia's laughter started filling the mornings. Doors slamming, music playing too loud, cereal bowls left in the sink. At first, the noise startled me. Then I realized something unexpected. I liked it. We cooked dinners together, burned a few, laughed about it. We watched old movies sprawled on the couch, her head resting against my shoulder like it used to when she was little. The silence that once felt threatening now felt earned. One evening, Mark stopped by with a folder tucked under his arm. "It's official," he said. "The guardianship case is permanently closed. Your assets are secure." Relief washed through me, but it wasn't the kind that made you celebrate. It was quieter, deeper. "There's one more thing," he added carefully. "I'd recommend setting up a trust. Something long-term, protection." I already knew what I wanted. I wanted in Mia's name, I said, for school, for her future. Mia's eyes widened. You don't have to." "I want to," I said, squeezing her hand. "You stood up when everyone else stayed silent." Mark smiled. "Then let's do it right." After he left, we sat at the table, surrounded by open books and half-eaten cookies. The world outside still carried echoes of betrayal, but inside these walls, something stronger was taking root. Trust. It didn't come back all at once. It never does. But piece by piece, it was rebuilding itself in small, ordinary moments. 6 months later, winter softened into spring. We drove out to the lake property one weekend, the same place my parents had left behind, the same place Rachel had tried to take. The water shimmered quietly, sunlight dancing across its surface. "Do you miss her?" Mia asked. I thought about it. About the sister I'd lost, about the stranger she became. "I miss who she used to be," I said, "not who she chose to become." Mia nodded, leaning against me as the wind rolled across the water. For the first time in a long while, I felt it. Peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because nothing was being taken from me anymore. And that was enough. Spring didn't fix everything. It softened the edges, but the scars were still there if I touched them. Some nights, I'd wake up convinced my phone was buzzing again, my heart racing as if another warning was coming. Other nights, I dreamed of Rachel, standing in my kitchen, smiling the way she used to, asking me to sign something I couldn't quite read. I always woke up before I did, but my hand would still be shaking. Mia noticed. She always did. "You okay?" she'd ask, pretending not to hover the way her mother once had. "I am," I'd say, and most days it was true. The investigation moved quietly in the background. Charges, depositions. Words I let Mark handle so I didn't have to carry them anymore. Rachel never reached out, not once. Sometimes that hurt more than anger ever could. One afternoon, while we were planting herbs in the backyard, Mia looked up at me. "Do you think she hates you?" The question caught me off guard. "No," I said after a moment. "I think she hated the version of herself she became. I was just convenient." Mia absorbed that in silence. Later that week, a letter arrived, no return address. I knew before I opened it. Rachel's handwriting was unmistakable. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was a justification. Pages of it. Fear, pressure, desperation. As if understanding would somehow make betrayal acceptable. I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer I rarely opened. Some things didn't need closure. They needed distance. That night, Mia and I ate dinner on the porch, watching the sky darken. Fireflies flickered in the yard like tiny, stubborn lights. "I'm glad I came to you," she said quietly. "So am I replied. Rachel tried to burn my life down piece by piece. My credibility, my future, my sense of safety. But standing there, listening to Mia laugh at something on her phone, I realized the fire hadn't taken everything. Some things survived, and some things, stronger things, had grown in the ashes. By summer, the house had learned our rhythm. Mia left for school early, earbuds in, backpack slung low. I worked from the sunlit corner of the dining room, sketches spread across the same table where my life had almost been dismantled. Some days, that irony stung. Other days, it felt like victory. Rachel became an absence more than a presence. No calls, no messages. Just a quiet gap where a sister used to be. I learned that grief doesn't always come from death. Sometimes it comes from discovering someone is still alive, but unreachable. One afternoon, Mia came home quieter than usual. She dropped her bag by the door and sat across from me, fingers twisting together. "She called," she said. My stomach tightened. What did she want? She said she misses me, that everything got misunderstood. Mia looked up, eyes searching my face. She asked if I'm happy here. I chose my words carefully. "And what did you tell her?" "That I am," she said, "because it's true." Something in my chest loosened. Rachel had tried to rewrite reality once already. I wasn't going to let her do it again, especially not through Mia. That night, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, studying my own reflection. I looked the same. Same eyes, same lines around my mouth. But there was a steadiness there I hadn't seen before. They had tried to call me incompetent, fragile, unreliable. Yet I had navigated lawyers, courtrooms, betrayal, and still built something gentler out of the wreckage. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it shows up quietly, every day, and refuses to leave. I shredded Rachel's letter that night. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Some relationships don't end with confrontation. They end with a decision. And mine was final. As I turned off the lights, Mia's laughter drifted down the hallway, soft and unguarded. I paused, listening. The space Rachel left behind wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with truth. And for the first time, I knew I wasn't afraid of the future, because I'd already survived the worst part of my past. By early fall, the air had changed, cooler, sharper, honest. Mia had settled into a routine, school, friends, plans for college she spoke about with a cautious kind of hope. Watching her rebuild her sense of safety did something unexpected to me. It forced me to look at my own. One evening, as leaves scraped along the sidewalk outside, she asked the question I'd been quietly avoiding. "Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" I set my mug down slowly. Steam curled between us like a fragile truce. I think forgiveness is misunderstood, I said. People think it means reopening doors that nearly destroyed you. She listened carefully. To me, I continued, forgiveness is deciding not to carry the poison anymore. It doesn't mean trust. It doesn't mean access. Mia nodded. So, you can forgive someone and still keep them away? Yes, I said. Sometimes that's the only way forgiveness survives. She seemed relieved by that. Later that night, alone, I pulled out my old journals, the daily logs I'd kept like armor during the fight. Page after page of proof, of survival. I didn't need them anymore. I boxed them up, not to erase what happened, but to acknowledge something important. The chapter was over. Rachel had tried to take my mind, my agency, my future. Instead, she had forced me to define them more clearly than ever before. I wasn't fragile, I was precise. And when I finally turned off the lights and went to bed, I realized something that startled me with its simplicity. I no longer felt watched, I felt free. Not because justice had spoken, but because I had. By the time winter returned, the sharpness of everything had finally dulled. Not disappeared, just softened enough that it no longer cut every time I breathed. Mia and I drove back to the lake one quiet weekend. The same property my parents had loved, the same place Rachel had once tried to turn into leverage. The road wound through bare trees and pale sunlight. The world stripped down to essentials. We stood by the dock, the water dark and still. Grandpa used to say this lake was where he felt closest to Grandma, I said quietly. Mia nodded. I think I get it now. Peace didn't come from holding on to people at all costs. It came from letting go of the ones who tried to hollow you out. Do you think she'll ever change? Mia asked. I watched the ripples fade back into glass. Maybe, but that's her journey, not ours. When we got home, the house greeted us with warmth. Laughter lived in the walls now. Safety. Choice. As Mia studied at the dining table, I poured us both tea and caught my reflection in the dark window. Same face, same life, but nothing fragile about it anymore. Rachel had tried to strip me of everything, my name, my autonomy, my future. Instead, she revealed what couldn't be taken, not my mind, not my worth, not the family I chose to build. And as I watched Mia look up and smile at me, I understood the final truth of it all. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who stands with you when everything else falls apart.